It is no secret that the narratives Hollywood built its empire on were both brilliant and at times oppressive. It is the early 1900s. Edison and the Lumiere brothers are revolutionizing film technology. In an effort to control the film industry, Edison limits his technology and begins to create a monopoly around the film industry. Frustrated with the strict censorship and control, directors such as Charlie Chaplin and Billy Wilder migrate west with production companies such as Paramount Pictures, Warner Brothers, and Columbia Pictures. As the film industry is gaining traction with their Nickelodeons back east, the migrating studios discovered that audiences are more interested in full-length feature films rather than short films. So as the studios land in sunny California, they revolutionized the film industry by focusing on creating full-length feature films, putting everyone under contract, writers, actors, and everyone else. They adopt an assembly line mentality. They essentially become the machine they were trying to get away from on the East Coast. Out of the reach of the Edison Trust, Hollywood could grow and flourish and become the monster as we know it today. During the golden age of Hollywood, the studios adopted the practice of creating movie stars with larger-than-life personas on and off the screen. And with the introduction of sound in the late 1920s, studios such as Warner Brothers ran with the technology and grew with the ever-changing industry. Who is Billy Wilder? Mr. Wilder was a man of many talents. He was an American filmmaker, producer, director, screenwriter, and visionary. Born in Austria in 1906, Wilder fled his country to avoid the Holocaust. Though he was able to avoid the clutches of Hitler, his parents were not so lucky. Determined to make pictures for Hollywood, Wilder migrated to Los Angeles in 1933. There he would get his break as a screenwriter. Wilder was married to Audrey Young. This was his second wife. He had 2 children, Victoria and Vincent. Over the course of his career, Wilder won many awards, some of which included 6 Academy Awards, 7 Golden Globes, 2 British Academy Film Awards, and many more. During the golden age of Hollywood, writers and directors generally stuck to the parameters of the Hays Code and the overall image of the dominating Hollywood studios. Of course, there were directors like Billy Wilder who pushed the boundaries, but still had to abide by the strict rules of the studios. As an established director with an artistic vision, Wilder was able to make movies that pleased the studio heads and challenged social norms.
In order to kind of familiarize you with where I come from, you must, because I was born in 1906, and you must think in terms of Austria in those days. It was a huge monarchy of 56 million people, Austro-Hungarian monarchy, Czechoslovakia, parts of Poland, Yugoslavia. And my father, by profession, was an owner of hotels, railroad restaurants, coffee houses, spread through the entire old monarchy, which collapsed in 1918, as we know. And I was born in a small town. I was brought as a kid of 2.5 years old. I, like everybody else, I would have to stand in line for sometimes 16, 18, 24 hours just for a couple of potatoes. You know, there was nothing to eat. It was sort of the end of the line. I remember vividly the revolution. I remember the decline of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. I was also doing some reportage of a criminal nature. I would do the dirty work. My job would be, for instance, to go to the parents of somebody who was a murderer, who had committed a murder, to ask for a photograph, or to somebody whose family had died in a fire, to ask. A very, very embarrassing thing for me. Naturally, everybody wanted to go to Hollywood, but it was the advent of Mr. Hitler that made us go into exile, which ultimately would lead many of us to Hollywood. When it became apparent that Hitler was going to take over and what his politics are, and that it's going to be impossible for any of us to work. The exodus started. Some, afraid that they could not speak any other language but German, went to Prague, some went to Vienna, but they were just fooling themselves because Hitler followed them and took over those countries. I then just had to sit down and start studying English. I went to night school. I searched for very handsome young ladies who only spoke English. That is a great help. I listened to the radio. I kind of tried to make a living by writing stories in German, which were translated, and I sold a couple here and made a few $1,000s. And ultimately, I sold one of those to Paramount, and they gave me a little bit of a contract there. In those days, I'm talking now about 1934, all studios had a huge amount of writers under contract. We had to deliver, I think it was 11 pages every Thursday. We had to hand in 11 pages of script. And you were assigned to pictures, and you wrote 2, 3, 4 pictures. You were taking off pictures. You were rewriting pictures. It was like a great big assembly line, a factory. And the lucky break we got was that the head of the writers department, he had an idea of teaming me up with Charles Brackett, a novelist, very learned and elegant man. But you know that at this time, Paramount was making 40, 45 pictures a year. They said, well, we like Brackett and Wilder as a team. We don't want to lose them. If that silly guy wants to break his neck, how good can it be? And they let me direct my very first picture. But I knew what they were thinking. So I found a story that was absolutely kind of foolproof. It was The Major and the Minor with Ginger Rogers. And we got Milan, with whom I worked subsequently. And I made a small, very successful picture. It was a rather mild, chaste version of Lolita.
What is this birdcage up there?
Well, it's a kind of symbolic gesture of my final freedom from the imprisonment in studios, as it were. It's the bird that has escaped the cage, has escaped the Universal Warner's Columbia neighborhood, which I call the Bermuda Triangle.
What makes Billy Wilder's work so distinguishable? For me, what I like about his films is that there is a simplicity to the way he approaches filming that perfectly complements his often complex and multi-layered stories. When I think of Billy Wilder and his collection of work, one word comes to mind: versatility. Much like his personal life, his films take us on a wide range of emotions. Some directors choose to focus on one genre, whereas Wilder's career covered a wide range of genres, from the comedy of Some Like It Hot to the dark noir drama of Double Indemnity. I think we can all agree that through the adversity of losing his family to the Holocaust and managing the corruption of Hollywood, Billy Wilder was able to channel that energy into his work and create some of the most recognizable and iconic films in the history of moving pictures. It seems like some of the main ingredients to the success of Billy Wilder's films were exceptional actors and film crews. In an interview, Wilder expressed that he loved working with actors who were great at what they did, and he didn't mind paying top dollar for top talent. This is evident in Wilder's films, as we see how he repeatedly used actors like Jack Lemmon and Marilyn Monroe in multiple films. Wilder's movies always seemed to have a cynicism that was both introspective and outright funny. He seemed to have the great ability of zeroing in on the core elements of the human condition and then relaying those observations back into the world. Because he had an understanding of the business inside and out, he was able to execute his films with great precision. What makes his films so exciting to watch isn't tricky camera movements and angles, nor special effects, but rather the brilliant use of mise-en-scene, acting, and excellent lighting. Having lived in Germany and Paris, Wilder's early films had a German expressionism feeling to them. As his career grew, his style became more glamorous and more Hollywood. Billy Wilder made his directorial debut in Paris in 1934 with Ma vie scène. Throughout the 5 decades that Wilder dominated the film industry, he carved out a distinguishable career. Many of his films hold up by today's industry standards, and his collective work is studied by aspiring filmmakers worldwide.